There's a printed circuit board inside every NVIDIA AI server that costs $3,000. One company in North America has the only fab that can make it at scale. That company is up 700% in 12 months, from $19.59 to $150.50. Wall Street still calls it a sleepy industrial. I'm Big Z. In this episode, we'll answer 3 questions. First, how did the PCB industry, printed circuit boards, the most boring topic in tech, double in margin and triple in attention in 18 months? Second, why does one Japanese company control the choke point above the silicon? And third, when does the entire substrate stack get disrupted by glass? Here's the setup. A printed circuit board is the green thing inside every electronic device. Until 2024, it was, in fact, boring, a $100 billion industry growing 5% a year, dominated by Chinese commodity producers, with single-digit margins for almost everyone. Then NVIDIA shipped Blackwell. The GB200 NVL72 rack, 72 B200 GPUs, 36 Grace CPUs, sells for $3 million. Inside that rack are 36 Bianca compute boards plus 9 NV switch trays. And underneath every chip sits an advanced ABF substrate. 126 of them per rack. NVIDIA shipped between 1.5 and 2 million GB200 systems in 2025. Multiply it out, that's 250 million advanced substrates in 1 year. That didn't exist as a product line in 2022. The boring industry stopped being boring. The technical story is about layers. A regular smartphone PCB has 4 to 6 layers of copper traces stacked on top of each other. The Hopper H100 GPU board, NVIDIA's previous generation, had about 8 to 10 layers. The Blackwell GB200 Bianca board has 16 layers, made from a material called Megtron 8 and ultra-low-loss copper-clad laminate that costs multiples of standard FR4. The GB300 Blackwell Ultra board, ramping now, is 16 to 20 layers in a mixed M8/M4 stackup. When Vera Rubin launches in late 2026, the layer count and the cost go up again. The PCB BOM cost as a percentage of total server cost has roughly tripled from Hopper to Blackwell. That is the entire reason this industry suddenly became interesting. Here's the thing nobody outside the chain understands. When people say PCB, they mean 2 completely different industries. The first is the board itself, the green motherboard underneath the CPUs and GPUs. That's HDI, High Density Interconnect. TTM in the United States, Jinding in Taiwan, Compec, WUS in China. Net margins in the high single digits to low teens. The second is the IC substrate, a tiny, much more precise board that sits between the silicon and the motherboard. That's ABF, Ajinomoto build-up film. Made by Ibiden in Japan, Unimicron in Taiwan, AT&S in Austria, Shinko also in Japan. Different process. Different fabs. Different customers. Different margins. The substrate is where the real money lies. Let me give you the numbers. Ibiden's electronics segment runs at a 22% operating margin. Operating profit grew 41% year-over-year in fiscal 2025. The company just announced 500 billion yen, roughly $3.3 billion, in capital expenditure over 3 years to expand its Gifu facility and build out 2 more sites. By fiscal 2027, Ibiden's substrate output will be 2.5 times what it is today. Unimicron in Taiwan is the actual share leader at roughly 22% of global ABF. AT&S in Austria just brought online a new fab in Kulim, Malaysia in May 2025, dedicated to AMD data center substrates. Samsung Electro-Mechanics in Korea, ticker 009150, just won a Broadcom AI substrate deal in 2025. The stock tripled. And Shinko Electric, the number 2 name on the list, was taken private in June 2025 by a Japanese government fund. Tendered at 5,920 yen per share. Public market exposure to the highest margin layer of the AI compute stack is now down to 3 listed names. So why can't anyone build new substrate capacity? Because every ABF substrate uses a film called ABF Ajinomoto build-up film, and Ajinomoto, the Japanese seasoning company that makes MSG, supplies more than 95% of it. There is no second source. The substrate fab itself takes 3 to 5 years to qualify for a top customer. The cleanroom requirements are tighter than legacy semiconductor fabs. Yields on the largest GPU substrates run below 70%. When Ibiden announces a capacity expansion, the order book past 2027 fills before the concrete is poured. In my view, this is the structural reason TTMI and Unimicron and Ibidin all moved in the same direction in 2024 and 2025. They aren't competitors. They're rationing. Here are the 12 companies you need to know. Substrate side, for listed names, Ibidin, Unimicron, AT&S, Samsung Electro-Mechanics. Plus the materials monopoly upstream, Ajinomoto. HDI server motherboard side, 6-volume players, TTM Technologies, the only North American one. Jinding, the world's largest PCB maker by revenue, 8 years running. Compec, tripod in Taiwan. WUS in China, 50% revenue growth, 70% net income growth in 2024 alone. Victory Giant, also in China, NVIDIA's #1 mainland HDI partner for the GB200 Bianca board, and revenue grew nearly 80% last year. Two adjacent names, Resonac in Japan, the copper-clad laminate maker, and Foxconn, the server assembler downstream. The chain has redundancy at the volume PCB layer. It does not have redundancy at substrate. Now let's talk about TTM Technologies, ticker TTMI. This is the outlier you cannot avoid. TTMI stock was $19.59 at its 52-week low. It hit 150.50 as the recent high. That is a 7-bagger in 12 months. Revenue grew 19% in fiscal 2025 to $2.9 billion. The data center computing segment alone grew 57% year over year. Networking grew 35%. Defense backlog hit a record $1.56 billion. The company is the only North American operator of Ultra HDI lines for AI accelerator boards. There is, structurally, no domestic alternative. But, and this matters, TTMI's new Penang, Malaysia plant ran at $5 million in revenue in Q3 2025, against a $30 to $35 million quarterly break-even target. The ramp is slower than guided. The Syracuse, New York Ultra HDI line doesn't come online until 2026. In my view, the stock is now priced for perfection at 5.8 times sales. The fundamentals are real. The execution risk is real. Both can be true at the same time, and that is exactly why this is the most interesting name on the board. Then there's China. 3 names you cannot ignore. WUS printed circuit. Revenue plus 49%. Net income plus 71%. Plans for HPC to become more than 40% of revenue by 2026. $600 million capex plan. They are NVIDIA's primary supplier for switch tray PCBs at Victory Giant Technology, the Bianca board partner. Listed in Shenzhen, just launched a $2.2 billion Hong Kong listing in 2025. NVIDIA's Jensen Huang has called the founder his Chinese partner. Shennan Circuits, more diversified. RMB 23 billion forecast for 2025. These 3 are scaling at the volume layer. Substrate is still a Japan, Taiwan, Korea club. So why does this matter for company picks? Because the margin chain tells you everything. Ibidin's electronics operating margin, 22%. WUS net income margin, 19%. Tripod net margin, 13%. Jinding, the world's largest PCB maker by revenue, runs at 7.6% net. Sanmina, the EMS player, is contracting. Same input, same chip, same end customer, 5 different layers of value capture. Each step further from the silicon, the worse the economics. This is the whole game. The chokepoint is in Japan. The volume is in China. The story stock is in California. And the disruption glass substrate is 2 years out, and it is coming for the highest margin layer in the chain. So where does this go in the next 12 to 24 months? 3 signals to watch. First, Ibidin's electronics operating margin. It just hit 22%. If it holds above 20% through 2026, the substrate oligopoly is intact. If it slips below 15, capacity is catching up to demand and pricing power is breaking. Second, TTMI's Penang plant ramp rate. Currently 5 million per quarter against a 30 million target. Watch the Q2 2026 earnings report. If they hit 20 million plus quarterly, the 7-bagger may extend. If it stays below 10, the multiple compresses fast. Third, Intel's Clearwater Forest launch in late 2026. That's the first volume glass substrate Intel chip. If it ships on time and yields hold, the ABF disruption clock starts. If it slips, Ibidin's expansion plan stays the right call. Watch also Upsolix and Corning announcements on Blackwell substrates for AMD MI400. Catalysts on the upside: NVIDIA Vera Rubin launch in late 2026, more ASIC programs from hyperscalers, glass substrate slipping to 2028. Catalysts on the downside: Intel glass substrate landing on time, China substrate makers cracking the high end, AT&S Kalim ramp accelerating to absorb capacity. Upstream: copper, Ajinomoto monopoly, ultra-low loss CCL. Downstream: every AI server assembler. They all sit downstream of these 12 companies. If you build supply chains for a living, this is the chain you should already know cold. I'm Big Z, follow me, see you in the next deep dive.